crazy over honey crisps.
Honey crisps, yeah.
Which is the last 2-3 years they've appeared.
Right.
So does that mean that they're not kosher?
So apples aren't kosher,
No, I don't think that's a.
and oranges aren't kosher.
No, no.
Lemons aren't
If
kosher.
it's apple to apple,
Yeah,
different bunch of apples, that's okay.
the cross.
That's not crossing, but if you take like an orange and put it with an apple, or a grape with a grapefruit,
No, that's not gonna work. But grafting S rolls, what do they graft them onto?
Maybe a
What were they-
lemon tree,
I don't know.
Yeah.
maybe some other citrus.
Because we heard the story about some Italian guy in Melbourne that imported 150 S roll trees, expecting that he's really gonna clean up with the Jewish community.
No one.
And they all said, nix, we don't know where this stuff is coming from.
Uh-huh.
And so this guy was, really out of pocket and hopping mad.
Wow.
And
Wow.
he said,
Whereas opposed to Eric's cousin Tammy, who actually has 2 esrog trees in her front lawn.
Oh, so that she can pick her, she goes out for Sukkot and.
Yes, and just picks.
so he said, why don't you sell them? Oh, no, But I said, are they kosher? She said, yes, absolutely. Brewed from seed.
Wow. Wow.
But a rabbi didn't see her, so how did he know?
That's right.
Right.
That's Tammy's problem.
Yeah. Wow.
But I mean,
Imagine
you learn
having your own
new stuff
hedgehog
every
tree in
day.
your yard. That's a pretty.
2.
Two, yeah.
And the other thing is the site on Friday evening in a suburb of Melbourne that's become very ultra-Orthodox where I grew up. And we're driving along a main street to a dinner engagement, and it's about 85, 90 degrees, and there's an old man with a white beard and a black frock coat, leggings, and a fur Streimer. But this is Australia.
It's hot.
The Antipodes, I mean, it's a convict. Thanks. That's high society these days.
Yeah.
For generations, people would hide
They're bad.
any background that smelt of convict, and now they're
Now.
desperately digging it up. So. Very funny how these things have changed.
What was your great-great-grandfather brought here for?
Well, actually, we have a friend who's been digging into his wife's family's background. And they've gone as far as, I think, the early 19th century, where some ancestor was a ship's captain. And
Wow.
despite very long voyages, still managed to leave behind a large family. So.
Hey.
And they've got all kinds of interesting documents, ship's records and so on.
Hey, fellas. All right.
Okay.
Well, I think
I think we are ready.
we'll dive in here. And thank you to Ami and Glenda for hosting this evening. And this is the
Thanks for the opportunity.
This is the second in our new series, Reconstructionism 201, and the last time we gathered together, we were looking at comparing the philosophy of Mordecai Kaplan with 2 other giants of 20th century Jewish thought, with Abraham Joshua Heschel and Martin Buber. Tonight we're going to take a more kind of psychosociological look into Kaplan's life and explore his, a little more deeply than usual, his approach, his thinking about the role of women in Judaism and how that might have developed. And I think it probably is one of the first things that people learn when they discover Reconstructionism is that Kaplan's daughter was the first female ever to be called to the Torah as a bat mitzvah. There were ceremonies called bat mitzvah ceremonies that preceded Judith Kaplan Eisenstein being called to the Torah, but no female Jew, as far as we know, ever in history was actually called to the Torah and recited the blessings over the Torah, and that's what would have happened had she been born a boy.
She didn't read.
She did not read from the Torah. No, but I'm wondering though if she read the Haftarah that day. I have to go back and, I don't think he doesn't, he's, Kaplan himself is very kind of, just almost nonchalant about how he discusses it in parts of his diary. But actually, one of the interesting things, there's a little note that we're going to look at here, where a little window into how some of his other family members felt about what he was doing. So what I did was I basically, I just made copies of this, the chapter from this book on Kaplan and the role of women in Judaism, and so we're just going to look at excerpts from it, and here, this, and then the rest can go all the way around this way. I think we'll have more than enough.
What about Susanna Heschel? Was she bat mitzvah? I just thought she was the one.
Well, I would imagine she was, but I don't know that I've ever heard anything about it one way or the other. I mean, she's much younger, right? I mean, she probably would have.
Okay,
In,
if she's much younger, the chances are that they're pretty good.
But I would think, you think maybe like in the early 60s or something, or the mid 60s, she would have been her.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
okay.
That was pretty prevalent.
Already in the
Yeah,
mid
that was
60s, there were in the Reform movement. Now I know she was, you know, she was in the conservative movement, but there were already conservative synagogues that that were having bat mitzvah ceremonies by then, and I think, and you know, because her dad was a faculty member at the Jewish Theological Seminary, I guess that could have cut in two different directions. That's an interesting question. It'd be interesting to find out how that, you know, how that played when she reached that age. So I will say, actually, I just happened to have I was at the Super Sunday calling thing today, and I was sitting at a table with a colleague of mine who is a local conservative rabbi, and he was reminiscing about his time at the Jewish Theological Seminary, and so I asked him if he ever studied with Kaplan, and he said that Kaplan retired the year after he started at JTS, but he did say that when he was right at the beginning of his first year at the Rabbinical Seminary, there was kind of an orientation, and Kaplan was the main speaker at the orientation. And he shared with me, I don't know if it was somewhat sheepishly, or he said, I think I've said this in public before, but he said that hour and a half of Kaplan at the orientation was the most intellectually stimulating moment of his rabbinical career at JTS. So
Wow.
I don't know, you know.
Wow.
I don't know if that's good.
Yeah, I don't know what that says, and that might, you know, but it was kind of a, I guess it was kind of, at least it was a compliment to Kaplan, if nothing else. I think that's, you know, anyway. So, okay, so with that, we're just gonna, I actually marked off the sections of each page that we're gonna look at, and the first one here is on the first page, 335, and if we're gonna, what we'll do is we'll just kind of go around the circle and read over the course of the evening. If anyone doesn't want to read, just pass, and we'll keep going. So, would you like to start?
Mordecai Kaplan's vanguard ideas with respect to women's equality in Jewish law are either attributed to his having had 4 daughters and no sons, or more seriously explained as the necessary consequence of his rational philosophy of Judaism. There is some truth in both of these explanations, but Kaplan's summary statement in his chapter, The Status of Women in Jewish Law, in the future of the American Jew, ought not be dismissed. This chapter, which calls for the full equality of women in Jewish law and in Jewish life, is surely the culmination of of an interplay of many factors, including his own family life as a child, as a husband and father, conditions in America during his early rabbinic years, his wide-ranging secular studies, and finally, his grand effort to reconstruct Judaism.
Okay, so and we're going to look at, there's a section that